Hello, everyone. I just want to thank you for coming to this seminar. This is our fifth seminar of the convention. And we have somebody that I've only known for about 2-3 years now. This happens to be Melanie Eckford-Prossor. She is Patricia Husak's daughter. Now, that might not mean much, but it does mean much to me because Patricia was a great friend. And I can see that Melanie is a chip off the old block. The problem is that she is smarter than anybody I've ever met. She is just soaking in this coin stuff because she was sort of forced into it. You know, when her dad, when Walter passed away, and then when Patricia passed away, the foundation was in jeopardy, the Liberty Cap Foundation. The person that really went to keep it going was Patricia and Melanie. Melanie has a daughter, Marissa, and Marissa and Melanie are the people that are responsible for the terrific content on the Liberty Cap Foundation website. They are doing what I consider to be just an excellent job. But today she's here to wow you with a seminar on looking for and at liberty. And I think you're going to be entertained with this one. I know you're going to be entertained. So, Melanie, the Early American Coppers Club wishes to express sincere gratitude to you for presenting this seminar, Looking for and at Liberty, as part of the educational forum here at the EAC Convention in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much, Melanie. We really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you, Chuck. Right. Okay, is this good? Can you hear me? Okay. If you were at Bill's talk, then you heard me say that last time I followed Bill. It's a terrifying thing to follow Bill. Bill knows as much about coins as I know nothing about coins, right? So we're in either end of the spectrum here. And oddly, when I follow Bill, I'm doing similar things to Bill, which is also very strange. We don't talk, we just must have this communal thing. So as Bill changed his title, so I have changed my title. It was supposed to be Looking for and at Liberty, and as you can see, it is now Looking for Liberty, the economic chains that might bind. And do you guys recognize who these people are? Yeah. So on our far left, we've got Adam Smith. And then in the middle, it is Ben Franklin. And it's Ben Franklin painted by a woman painter in Paris when he's in his 70s. And then the young, handsome guy? Hamilton. Yeah, exactly. So I know, you know, I came so close to not opening with that. Yeah, that's right. I was a professor, and probably one of the most winsable moments was when a friend of mine was giving the speech at graduation in front of thousands of faculty members, and she decided to rap parts of Hamilton. It was excruciating. So I will save all of us from that. All right. So Bill started with, Bill's first slide was his research, and my first slide is my approach. Because I come at, as an English professor, I come at coins from the perspective of the Liberty Cap Foundation, which is to look at coins in terms of culture and history, right? And to stimulate curiosity. And so that's really what my goal is today, is to open up a lot of questions. So I'll have a lot of open-ended questions. And cultural studies is a field that that pulls from many other fields and that ultimately studies power, identity, and culture. And you sort of pull as you can. And in some ways it makes much more sense than siloing a piece of literature off, looking simply at the text apart from any of the things that created it. Is that me? That beeping? No, okay. So today what we're going to do is we're going to explore how the different iconography on the coins might reflect different views of the country, of the economy, and of the mechanisms of currency. That's my small goal for the next few minutes. All right, so, oh numismatists, what do we have here? Yeah, yeah, and this, everyone knows that this is Franklin's currency, right? And so when I talk about Franklin and the Fujio cent, which I will be doing in just a minute, can I just go rogue? You can hear me, right? Can you all hear me? Yeah, okay. I cannot stand behind a lectern. As a short person, it's not a good idea. So we all accept that this is created by Ben Franklin, yes? Okay, so when I talk about the Fujio cent, I'm not going to say that Ben Franklin designed the Fujio cent, rather that the images, right, are pulled from that. And so 1776. One of the questions that I think we need to start to look at is, here we have Ben Franklin, who probably more than almost any other American understood the persuasive power of images. Think of the snake, think of Don't Tread on Me. And I think that part of what he's doing with any of the images that he creates is he is creating what we would think of as a kind of marketing campaign to create the kind of country that they thought they needed, right? And so you take these images that we've got on the Fujio cent, and I'm looking particularly, obviously, at the reverse of the chains, and this goes to the point that Bill just debunked, but I just got that piece of information a few minutes ago, so I'm going with old information, that the reception of each of the coins speaks to competing economic policies, right? And I think one of the things that's really important is everybody talks about this as not being a popular cent, right? That's a standard thing to say, is it's not popular. But I did some research on why it's not popular. And part of the reason it's not popular, and so apologies if this covers stuff that you guys already know well, but in the hope that maybe one person doesn't, part of why it's not popular is because they were light, right? The cents were light. And so it's not that the design is not popular. It's that the cent isn't popular because you're not actually getting a cent. You would be getting less than a cent. The copper was light. It wasn't a reliable method of currency. And I think, and I'm looking at Garrett, who's grown up in an entirely digital world. I think that in our world, you know, I give you $1 and it's a representation of $1. Nobody really expects it to be 100 cents. I live in an almost entirely digital world in terms of money. I give you $1, I don't even really see the dollar, right? So we see money as representative, but they saw money as literal money. And so part of the lack of popularity was that it just wasn't worth what it said it was going to be worth. It's not, and why am I harping on this? Because it's not a commentary about the design. It's a commentary about the currency as currency. So the design still stays as a popular design, and that's in part how we get this here. And I think it's important, right? This is minted under the auspices of the Articles of Confederation, which is replaced with the Constitution. Okay, so how come, and Bill's answer is because the hub broke, how come there are changes on devices from the 1787 Fujio to the 1793? What does it suggest about the way the country thought of or conceived of capitalism? And if one design was embraced, why was the other design changed, right? And I think John was asking in the previous talk, is there one person who maybe shut it down? There were a few questions who were sort of saying, well, why not just redesign it? I mean, if everybody liked the chain cent, then let's just redesign the chain cent. You might recognize the American flag at the top there. Part of what I was interested in and part of what my research explored was what changes, what really changed from the Articles of Confederation to the Constitution? Was the country really thinking of itself in a different way? Or did it think of itself in a form of continuity? And so that again, you can sort of see what I'm setting up, I hope, to get to the question of the coins. Well, the only thing that really changes with the American flag is that there's a flag act that codifies how you change the flag. Get a new state, add a new star, and so on, right? So that stays the same the whole way through to pretty much now, right? You add 50 states, or Canada, 51 states, and you have to redesign the flag. Any thoughts here about why one design, and Bill doesn't get to say anything because he's just explained it to us, but why do you think it was rejected? Why reject the wreath? Other than the the chain. Why reject the chain other than the pragmatic idea that the hub itself broke?
I thought it was bad press.
Bad press, yeah, because the press was...
I blame the press for everything.
Then and now, yeah.
Both can be true.
Both can be true, exactly. Both can be true.
What did Bill say?
Both can be true, yeah. Tom?
Melanie, I apologize for coming in a little late, but I think I'm following your question theme. And when Bill was talking, he mentioned that a number of dyes were already created for the large center, including some wreaths.
Mm-hmm.
After his meeting broke, another gentleman asked me if I knew when the half-cent dyes were made, because they started with wreaths. So the thought he had was maybe they just wanted the large cents to catch up with where the half cents were going to start. There would be a level of consistency in the currency.
Okay, all right.
Wow, what a thought.
Yeah.
I can actually answer that a little bit. The half-cent dies, nobody knows when they were made.
Okay,
There's no record.
okay, all right. But the argument about consistency appeals to us, right? We look at the flag is consistent. We've got a principle for why we change. Why would we change what's on the reverse of a coin? Just keep it all consistent. We all know about the Coin Act of 1792, right? We all know what is required on there. One of the things that I want to sort of suggest is that between 1776 and 1793, we have not just a shift in the way the country thinks of itself, but we have a shift in sort of dominant age groups, and we have a shift in economic policy. So that's sort of to give you a vision of where we're going. So here's, anyone know what this is up here? No?
Chains for measuring a rood?
Perfect. It's a surveyor's chain, actually. So surveyor's chain. We know that Franklin was a surveyor among many other things. I'd always like to, I love our older Ben Franklin enactors, but wouldn't you like to see like a 10-year-old Ben Franklin? What would that creature have been like, right? So young Ben Franklin would have known this, and this was an intellectual rabbit hole I went down about 18th century understandings of chains and the use of chains and so on. So when Franklin is 23, so Garrett, this gives you about 12 months to get there, you can start to write some tracts about plentiful money supplies. And Franklin is very concerned with literally the amount of money that is in the country, right? And the British restrict the amount of money that's in the country. And because we're speaking on a literal economy and not a digital economy, you restrict that, you're restricting trade and so on. When Franklin goes to England, he meets up with Adam Smith and they hit it off. There aren't any letters between them. Smith's letters were burned after his death. Franklin's letters are confiscated and so on. But there's a lot of reason to believe that they had a fair amount of intercourse with each other in the 18th century vision. And what the other thing that they're doing is, it's easy to say that Smith influences Franklin, but there are other people who will argue that Franklin influences Smith. So if we put those together, then what we've got is Franklin as an advocate of free trade. Fair? Fair so far? Okay. So there's a really, I think, fascinating article called Pudding Economics in an Oxford journal on American literature and culture. And this guy, Horowitz, argues that identity and ultimately the character of a society are fabricated through ongoing, visible, and expanding social intercourse, which was their term for commerce in the period. And so pudding economics for the way that Franklin thought of something is profit or benefit, so that there's always some pudding in it for you. There's a certain level of self-interest. Most of us know about Ben Franklin. We know about Ben Franklin and electricity. We have old Ben Franklin and one of the founding fathers. But we also know about him through the almanac, Poor Richard's Almanac, yes, and the sayings. And so this is a really, if you like literature and want to nerd out, it's an absolutely brilliant article that is ultimately arguing that Poor Richard's Almanac and The Way to Wealth are not didactic tracts, but are pieces of fiction that Franklin is using to sort of ironically talk about wealth, debt, prosperity, and frugality. So he's calling into question the way that we like to think of Ben Franklin. One of the things that he emphasizes that really struck me is that there's a dynamic circle, and this is true for 18th century sort of free trade understanding of economics, a cycle of want, trade, debt, want, debt, trade. And Thomas Jefferson writes about this too. Jefferson has some pieces where he says, we need wives to push their husbands to make more money. They have to want more than their husbands have, but not too much. And he actually has a whole tract on this. So you have to ask your husband for just enough for him to make more, not so much that he'll go into debt. So this idea of economy, this want, trade, debt, what I want to argue here in terms of the Fugio cent is that it's, and cents in general, is it's democratizing access to capital. Right? If you have access to the penny, then you have access to capital. You can start to participate in this. And if you want people to look at an image and think that they want to participate in this cycle of want, trade, debt, what better thing could you have, right, than a chain? So we know that earlier on it had the names of the colonies, but want, trade, debt, want, trade, debt. And we are all one in this economic cycle of want, trade, debt, want, trade, debt. So far, so good? Questions, thoughts? Brilliant refutations? Okay. Okay refutations? Okay. All right. Okay, so enter Alexander Hamilton. And I nearly gave Leon a complete heart attack, and so I decided to not do what I did, was I happily came in here 3 minutes before, unplugged everything, and started to try and tamper with my presentation. I looked at her face and decided I just couldn't do that. But what this was supposed to be was on transition, so it's a lot of text. Apologies for that. So Christian Parenti, who is an economics professor at John Jay College, notes that Hamilton's 1791 report on the subject of manufactures opens with a direct attack on Adam Smith and laissez-faire. Right? So you've got the younger Hamilton coming in with a very direct attack on what had been the status quo. And for Hamilton, according to Parenti, the Republic's survival is not guaranteed by military victory, nor by experiments in democratic government alone. It required, and I think this is interesting, a profound economic transformation. And that economic transformation is not going to happen naturally through want, debt, trade, debt. It had to be produced by sophisticated, innovative, and sweeping program of government action. So this is part of what he writes in Federalist Number 1 when he's sort of defending that you need to have a constitution. He's saying we need something new. And we need something new, and I think this is the interesting point here, because there's a disastrous mirage that the United States, the brand new country, can have free trade. How can we have free trade? We're in massive debt, right? We've just come out of a war, and we've just come out of colonial dominance. So England can have free trade, the UK can have free trade. They are the preeminent country in the world, sure. How do we have free trade? And for Hamilton, the answer is we can't have free trade. And he comes up with, subsidies, which are interesting to think about. They are almost like what we would think of as incentives for startup businesses. He believed in manufacturing. The sort of economic policy of the day coming out of the French is that agriculture is what's going to make a country great. And he's like, no, in America, manufacturing is going to make a country great. So, and what you need is new ways to manufacture. So he says here, the invisible hand will not deliver development. Government has to conceive and execute a plan for that to happen. So if Franklin believes that a plentiful currency is going to fuel free trade, Hamilton is suggesting stabilizing the economy through government intervention. Tom?
Couldn't keep my mouth shut here, so I'm going to throw it out. If it was 1791 and I were a Federalist, like Alexander Hamilton, I would read that whole slide as a shot against states' rights, Thomas Jefferson, agriculture.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, some of the stuff Franklin. Not arguing.
Oh, no, I think that's absolutely right. I think that's exactly right. And as you know, right, if you know anything about this, Jefferson and Madison hate what he's proposing. I mean, absolutely hate what he's proposing, which is weird because Madison and Hamilton are working together on Federalist. But yeah, then it's like, oh, wait a minute, we didn't mean that, right? That's not what we actually meant. Okay, so I can't even, after your talk, I can't even look at this. But, all right, so what we've got here, and last year, one of the things that I said about this is I love this coin. I absolutely love this face because, the standard thing is that she's in a fright. I'm arguing that is not a face in fright. It is a face that is resolute, and it is looking forward, and it is saying, God damn it, this is the future for this country. I'm not afraid of anything. And also for the people that say her hair is in a fright, excuse me. Excuse me. And what I love about that is it's completely natural, right? It's a wild liberty. And what I said last year, and I still think is true, is that she's increasingly domesticated. And in part, you could argue maybe she's increasingly domesticated by these government programs, right? But we still have this. So we have this new vision of America, and we have this old vision of an economics that perhaps no longer works, or at least, at the very least, has to be rethought. So, does the iconography convey to people this desire for democratized access to capital? And if we go to that idea of we are one, how do people participate? Is it simply in want trade debt, or is there something else that the government can offer them? Right? And one of the big things was, and I'm pondering here, I'm pausing because I'm pondering if I even want to go into it, but I'm so far down the line on this sentence, so I'm going to keep going. There's this idea of the exchange of forms of labor, right? So you are doing something absolutely physical, you are producing a box, and then you are getting something incredibly physical, you're getting money, and you're trading it else for something else physical, you're trading it for baked goods, let's say, right? And so there's that cycle that we're talking about. Okay. So how should people economically relate to each other? And is there a struggle over what key qualities would hold the country together? So what we have on the Fujio is images that go all the way back to 1776, right? And here we are in 1793. Is it the same country? Does it need the same economic vision? Does it need something new to hold it together? Well, we know that Congress says, no, you have to have, it has to say liberty, right? We know that. We know that there's a vision for what it should look like. And so what I'm about to do is I'm about to look at the obverse of the coin, but over with the Fujio, we've got surveillance by self and others, we have a focus on time, and we have we are one. In the 1793 chain to the 1793 wreath, we have an increasingly youthful, right? This is, you know, an 18th century dream for women getting increasingly younger, right? Liberty gets younger and prettier. We go from the chain, which I would argue is that sort of free trade vision, to a wreath with prosperity, but also, right, that conscious decision to move to Rome, to move to empire. And clearly, this is a small, broken country, right? So saying we're an empire is a huge leap, right? But the coins say that. So far, let me go back. Thoughts about this? Anyone? Any ideas? Does it make sense? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Okay. So, does a schism grow between views of community and economy in 1787 versus ideals and national self-presentation in 1794? Is the wreath sent, so here's the punchline, right? Is the wreath sent an enactment of a sophisticated, innovative, sweeping program of government action? Does the wreath sent suggest a different vision of the country? One that goes back to empire, but also one that's based in growth, right? Wreaths grow. We know that wreaths, you know, and obviously you guys know more than I. Is it a trefoil? Is it a laurel? Is it the strawberry leaf? There's all of those questions. But it's an entirely different vision, and it's a refusal of we are one, right? Nowhere on there does it say we are one. The assumption is that we are one, but the background also is that you have the liberty, the forward look, to go out and make your fortune as you want. You're no longer linked into that vision. And it's even tied up with a bow, right? That vision of what America could be for you. Okay, all right. So what I'm ultimately arguing is that this is an economic enactment of liberty. And you might want to still participate in want, debt, trade, but you're enacting liberty as you do that. And you've got a wreath which suggests stability in empire. You're not surveilled. Oh, and someone changed the... oh, okay. Yeah, someone went in, not me, and changed the image. That was supposed to be a Fujio over there. So when I was talking about surveillance over here, right, you've got the sun looking down on us, you've got the emphasis on time. There's this forced connection to each other, this sort of rhetorical connection, a sales point. We're in a war against another country. We are one. We are all going to work together. And then we get to the other side. And we've got this wreath asking us to think about a new stability and the building of a new empire. And we finally got coins that are going to be worth what they're going to be worth what they're supposed to be worth. And there's that stability for people in a low denomination coin. You can trust us. Your penny is going to be worth a penny. Okay. Questions? That's a lot that I threw at you right now, I know that.
I know I said they got rid of the chain set because the hook broke, but that doesn't tell why they went to the wreath set.
Right.
So absolutely both can be true. And clearly they intended to go to the wreath scent well before they did, because it took time to make that hub. It took time to make the dyes. They had to make several dyes before they started striking. So there's no question that from the beginning, going to the wreath motif and the flowing hair of the wreath and so on was intentional.
Yeah.
And that they were going to do that. It's just a question of when.
When, yeah. That's really interesting. So they were already shifting that vision. Yeah, and so what I would argue then is that this is a shifting for a new economic way that we relate to each other, rather than surveillance and a forced connection to each other. And this is in some ways, you could argue, right, the looking outwards, the pioneer spirit that you have to have, that comes in the early 19th century. Okay, right. That's it. That's all I've got. Yeah. Go for it.
Who came up then with the design for the wreath? Bill, do you know?
No, I didn't.
There's no record.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything. So,
There's no record of who designed the chain either, just who engraved it.
yeah. Tom, sitting back on the skeptical way.
I've got a couple wheels in here. One thing that, not a counter proposal, but maybe another layer. The wreath is on nobody's head.
Mm-hmm.
She's on the other side, and she's wreathless.
Yeah, love that.
So I'm kind of torn on the empire comment. I mean, there's a weird, not an empire message there too.
Well, I think there is absolutely a weird, not an empire message. I think, but there's also a subtle nod to the possibility of empire, right? It's not we're an empire with Washington crowned with the wreath, or Charles II, was it? Charles II, right? It is the empire. And I think if you were, walking around Philadelphia or Boston or New York, and you got one of these in your hands, you 100% would look at that carefully. And you would say, oh, this is one of the new ones. And you would be doing all the comparisons we do, right? They saw so far fewer images than we saw. And they would be fascinated.
I would add one more thing to that the next design after that, the Liberty Cap with the pole, that's taken from Rome. And the Roman Empire used Liberty Caps on poles, even though it was a symbol of freedom. But the Roman Empire absolutely used the Liberty Cap and pole for centuries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But that's an empire.
And that's right. And there's that conscious decision in American architecture to forego Georgian and Palladian influences and go for the influences of Rome, right? So that break from England. So, but yeah, Tom, I think that's a really excellent point.
Were the cap and pole, Bill, weren't they to represent the peasants though?
They were to represent, they were given to slaves who were free and became Roman citizens.
Okay, yeah, that's, okay, got it.
So it wasn't to do with being a peasant or not, it was to do with being free from slavery
Yeah,
and then becoming a citizen.
yeah.
Here's another one of those, I have the question but not the answer, thoughts. We had 5 or 6 different currencies circulating on these lands at that time. We were one, and we were small. I don't know anything about the others, I just don't live there, but I wonder whether any of those had wreaths, whether they were anybody's heads.
That's very cool. Now you've given me a new rabbit hole to dive down. So thank you for that.
There's the answer in here. Lou probably knows, right, Lou? No. Bill, do you know?
No.
Garrett?
Yeah, just going back to another point Bill made in his talk is that there weren't really a lot of chain and recents that circulated. So I think like in the Philadelphia area where the people did see them, I think that could have had an influence, the kind of imagery of it. But maybe beyond that, it might have been a little too early since I think there were only like 65,000 recents that were made as well. So it still would have been fairly limited in its reach. So
Yeah. I see that. I mean, that's an excellent point, Garrett. Thank you. But does that negate the idea that it's a different way of thinking about the way we connect to each other,
No, definitely.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I just think that that message might not have really expanded.
Hasn't expanded yet. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean,
It took time to get the word out.
it took time to get the word out. And I mean, I think we've forgotten why we elect someone in November and then we actually put them in the, you know, pretty much the end of January. And it's because they had to travel all of that distance, right? So yeah, so it took a long time for things to,
It used to put them in until March.
yeah, yeah. Moved it up to January. Yeah, yeah. Versus, you know, the English system where, you know, you lost this morning and tonight you're sleeping somewhere else, right? Because it's so much denser. Okay. I work with the Liberty Cap Foundation, and one of the things we really like to do, it's just my favorite thing that we get to do, is we get to give away money. And so we give away 1794 grants. Every EAC member's heart should pound with joy at that number, right? $1,794 to do with what you want, as long as it somehow connects with our mission. Our mission is cultivating curiosity about coins, culture, and history. And we gave some to Liana, who we're going to have an interview with her. It'll be on the website and on our social media. But I would encourage people to, if you've got a project that you want to explore, we're really interested in funding, you know, exciting projects. It can be pretty much what you want. The grants are closing, or the application date is closing on June 15th, so there's still time. But we'd love to give people money. Looking at a few people out here. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate it.